let's be honest, the religious are really bad at convincing skeptics of anything, really. I mean, they're really, 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 really bad at it. So bad, in fact, that most of the time they don't even try. Instead, they just tell themselves and their followers ridiculous stories that don't hold up to critical scrutiny because, well, they're all kind of dumb, aren't they? If you need any more proof of that, here we go again. Hey, guess what? Frank Turek is still a lying sack of crap. Yeah, I know, that's a big surprise and all, but it's still true. This time, he's on a podcast, or whatever it is, called Got Questions Ministries. I think we've looked at one of their videos before, I don't really remember, and we found that for all of the questions they asked, they sure locked the comments down to make sure that nobody could actually answer. It's funny how that works, isn't it? Anyhow, the question before Frank is, what is the most effective way to convince an atheist that Christians are right? Something like that. I don't know. Frank never really gets there anyway. He's just trying to get back to the script that he's following because he doesn't have anything else. If he had anything else, he'd actually have to think. Yeah, Frank Turek thinking. Sure, what a hoot.
So when you debate with an atheist or have a discussion with someone who's questioning the existence of God, what have you found to be some of the more effective ways of at least getting them to think in ways maybe they've never thought about the issue before?
Well, I get to answer first. My video, my rules. So hold your horses there, Frank. Because here's the actual reality, at least from my perspective. I don't think the religious have a single good approach to anything, period. I have never once seen anything remotely worthwhile in close to 40 years of doing this. Mostly, I think that's because I don't even let them get faith on the table. Faith means nothing at all to me. Anybody can have faith in anything. It's just not impressive. No, I care what you can actually objectively demonstrate with demonstrable facts, and the religious are really piss poor at that, aren't they? So I doubt right off the bat that Frank is going to come up with anything worthwhile. Granted, he's not really making content for skeptical people. He's making it for the gullible religious idiots who he wants to fleece. But hey, I'm willing to be proven wrong, so go right ahead, Frank. Impress us. This ought to be good.
Well, it really depends on the venue. I mean, if you're talking to an atheist in a formal debate, that's one thing. But if you're just talking to somebody in casual conversation, that's another.
It also depends, I'm sure, on just how much control you have. And this is something that we've seen the religious say quite a few times. It doesn't really matter what you say, so long as you can control the responses. And that's why they want to be in charge of the venue. When people are lining up at a microphone to ask Frank questions, as we see in a lot of his videos, he can pull the plug anytime he wants. He gets to decide which videos go up on his channel and which videos don't. And he gets to edit anytime he wants, because there's nobody there who can tell him he can't. This is not just Frank, of course. People like Ray Comfort do it all the time. Clift Connectal, he will pull the microphone away from anybody that makes him uncomfortable. Yada, yada, yada. This is really, really common. Because it's not about having an intelligent, rational, honest conversation. It's about getting the message out there that you want without allowing the skeptics to get a word in edgewise. But that's really not an answer to the question that Frank was asked, so let's let Frank keep going so he can continue to make a fool of himself. So anyway, Frank, what is the most effective way to interact with an atheist? Because I'm really curious.
I think you want to establish common ground first. You know, what do you believe is true, and then work from there. Most people around the world, Shay, actually believe that some kind of God exists, right? So if they already believe that, then maybe what you just need to do is give them evidence that the Christian God is true.
Well, since this is about atheists, that's not really relevant, is it? Frank runs on a script and he doesn't really know what to do when the rug is whipped out from under him. Atheists don't believe in gods, so why are you bringing this up? I mean, try to make sense here, Frank. Maybe you might impress someone. I mean, never mind the fact that there's no evidence of any kind that the Christian God is real, because Frank doesn't really care about that part. I think we really do need to get back on track where Frank actually answers the question at hand. I mean, that assumes that he ever does that, which usually he doesn't, if you notice. But I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and let him continue.
And I think you can do that, first of all, by confirming that a theistic God exists, a God beyond the world who created and sustains the world. And I normally do that through three arguments: the argument from the beginning of the universe, sometimes called the cosmological argument; the argument from design, also called the teleological argument. There's design in the universe and design in life; and the argument from morality, known as the moral argument.
You're still not talking about atheists, though, are you, Frank? None of those things are going to impress an atheist. We're just going to laugh our collective asses off if you bring any of that up. Of course, this is just Frank trying desperately to get back to his script. He's really, really bad at speaking off the cuff. Most of them are, if you notice. That's why they really don't do it very often, because they suck at it. Cornering these people and expecting them to provide honest, unrehearsed answers is virtually impossible because they just can't handle it. It's why every single discussion that Frank ever has, it will involve these 3 points in that specific order, because that's all he really knows how to do. It doesn't matter how many times he gets defeated at it, he persists because he's got zero originality and no creativity. But then again, as we all know, Frank just doesn't care, does he?
So cosmological, teleological, and moral arguments. And when you unpack those arguments, Shay, you get a being that looks like the God of the Bible without even opening the Bible.
Except you don't. Now, this has 2 problems that Frank will never ever acknowledge, because they instantly do away with his entire so-called ministry. First, none of those arguments actually get you to a God. These are all just empty claims. We know that they're desperately trying to jockey for position so that they can claim, therefore God. But that's never ever the logical outcome of any of their positions. It's all meant to mislead the gullible and the uneducated, who are already desperately looking for a reason to believe that they were right all along. And that's why none of these actually ever get you anywhere when talking to an actual atheist, which of course is why people like Frank just don't do it. Secondly, he says that it looks a lot like the God of the Bible. Well, so the hell what? From everything that we can tell, the God of the Bible is just made up. That's like saying, well, it sounds a whole lot like Harry Potter. Yeah, big deal. Who cares? You'd have to demonstrate that the God of the Bible actually existed in the first place, and that the characteristics that have been arbitrarily stapled onto him by believers are actually accurate. And good luck on that. That's why people like Frank announcing, well, I define my God like this, is completely meaningless. You don't just get to define things into existence, Frank. You have to show how you got that information in the first place, and you have to demonstrate that that's what God is really like. They're really, really, really bad at that, if you notice. Why is that?
For example, from the cosmological argument alone, which, by the way, atheists are admitting the data for the fact that the universe had a beginning. They're admitting that the universe had a beginning. Stephen Hawking, famous atheist physicist, famously said, almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang.
Yeah, not so much. Sure, our particular instantiation of space-time did, but this is nothing at all about the entire cosmos. The Big Bang is just the expansion of the primal singularity. It says nothing at all about where said singularity came from in the first place. It wasn't an explosion out of nothing like the religious want to pretend that it was. They're really, really good at misinterpreting science in a way that they can use to con the religious out of more money. They're not actually talking to scientists any more than they're talking to atheists. They're just using straw men and bald-faced lies to get where they desperately want to go so that they can pass around the collection plate. Frank, you're a lying sack of crap. Knock it off.
Okay, so he's admitting the data. He doesn't think it was God, but what kind of cause could it have been, Shay? If there was nothing, no space, time, or matter, and then space, time, and matter came into existence, it seems to me that whatever caused space, time, and matter to come into existence can't be made of space, time, and matter.
That's because you're starting with the conclusion that you reached for entirely emotional reasons. When the only tool that you have in your toolbox is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail, doesn't it? So he misinterprets, or let's be honest, openly lies about the data because people like Frank are ignorant and dishonest. They claim that atheists agree with them, which is not in fact the case, and they don't actually come out and talk to actual scientists or actual educated atheists because we'll just make them look like the ridiculous fools that they are. That's one more reason that they don't actually talk about the data itself. They have no idea what any of the data means. They can just say, well, here's this stuff that's out there. But they aren't conversant in what that stuff means. They just misquote and misinterpret the experts so that it looks to other people who are just as ignorant as they are that we all agree with them, even when we don't.
In other words, the cause must be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful to create the universe out of nothing, personal in order to choose to create, because only persons can choose to create, or choose to do something. Also intelligent, or, to have a mind in order to make a choice. So I always ask people, I say, when you think about a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent cause, who do you think of?
Nobody, because you just yanked all of that right out of your ass. That's the problem. He's desperately trying to get to the conclusion that he already believes is true. He isn't allowing the data to dictate the conclusion because not only does he not understand the data, he doesn't actually care where it leads. He just wants his childish fifis to get stroked, and that's what this is all about. The reason that he doesn't actually talk to us in an open and honest manner is because we're not going to agree with all of the straw men that he's been presenting. We actually have the data on our side, and we actually understand what the data is, what it represents, and how you get there. We have the knowledge and the training, most of the time anyway, to explain why Frank is wrong. And he can't have that, can he? Because he's got a flock to fleece. So he'd rather spin these absurd yarns from the stage to people who are looking to validate their own emotional conclusions and hand over their money to the dumbass up front. This is a scam, people. Why are the religious too dumb to figure it out?
God of the Bible.
Yeah, God, or at least, it could be Allah at this point, right? We don't know if it's the God of the Bible, but it could be the God of the Bible.
You're not remotely close to a God at this point, Frank. All of the invented characteristics that you've just thrown out there, they don't get you anywhere because you can't demonstrate that any of it is even remotely close to being true. At the point that we're actually at, naturalistic processes work just as well. Better, in fact, because you don't have to make things up and rely on your feelings to get where you want to go. But of course, this is all part of Frank's script too, which is why he's not on an atheist podcast where they just wipe the walls with him. He's talking to already convinced Christians who just want to be comforted. It's not at all hard to see what these idiots are doing wrong. At least, not if you actually give a crap about the truth.
And all you need to do at that point is to see if Jesus rose from the dead. And if he did, it turns out that the same being that walked out of the tomb 1,988 years ago is the same being in whose divine nature created the universe out of nothing. So it is the God of the Bible.
Yeah, Good luck on doing that, Frank. You can't even prove that Jesus ever existed at all. And you notice the gish gallop here, right? That if Jesus rose from the dead, then automatically that's the same thing as having created everything out of nothing, yada, yada, yada. Well, you haven't read your own stupid book, Frank, because there's plenty of people in the Bible that came back from the dead. Are those God? No, not according to you, but you don't bring that up, do you? Because even if you could prove that Jesus rose from the dead, and you're not even remotely close to doing that, you still have every bit of your work to do coherently linking the two ideas together. Just because your silly book of mythology makes a bunch of unsubstantiated claims, that doesn't make them so.
But from just one argument, Shay, the cosmological argument, you get several attributes of God without opening the Bible. You get a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent being. And so I think if you can show them that the theistic God exists, then it's a short step to showing that the Christian God is the true God.
But you haven't done any of that, Frank. You've gotten absolutely nowhere close to any kind of a God whatsoever. This is why philosophy is completely useless for determining anything that actually exists in reality. It is the wrong tool for the job. But the right tool shows that the religious are out of their ever-loving minds, so they don't want to use that. They won't talk to us, and they don't have the honesty to just tell the truth to their followers, because this isn't about honesty. This is about money, control, and power. Because if we look at what Frank actually said here, this was far from the most efficient way to convince atheists. It was an example of how religious idiots like Frank Turek hide from actual confrontations because they're just too terrified to be outed as the zealous conmen that they are. It's why we have to wonder why Frank is the way that he is. Well, mostly it's because he just doesn't care. Because he isn't an honest interlocutor. He's a lying sack of crap. In it for a buck because he knows how to manipulate the religious mind. And I use that word very, very loosely to get what he wants. There is no doubt in my mind whatsoever that Frank is just a scam artist lying for the Lord to make a buck. Whether he's getting high on his own supply or not, that's not really relevant. How he behaves shows conclusively that he just isn't interested in the facts. Not at all. He only cares about how he feels. And, well, the money, of course. It's always about the money. But Frank doesn't give a damn about the truth, and nobody he's talking to is smart enough to figure it out. This really shouldn't be that difficult to understand. Why it seems to be for the religious, I have no idea. If you do, let me know in the comments, because I'd really love to figure out the truth.
Bum